Great. You should see my slides. And so my name is Chris Pyke. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for GRESB, and I have had the pleasure of also supporting ARC Japan and other ARC activities around the world. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about GRESB, including what it is and how the technology and offerings of ARC Japan and other partners contribute to our mission and our business. First, GRESB is a number of things. GRESB is a nonprofit foundation dedicated to stakeholder engagement and the governance of the GRESB standards. That foundation brings together institutional investors, property managers, and partners from around the world. GRESB is also a Dutch company that operates the GRESB assessments, notably for real estate and infrastructure. And GRESB is also a growing suite of capabilities to understand real asset sustainability. You may see going forward a variety of logos that reflect GRESB. GRESB, we also talk about real. These are benchmarks for individual assets, and a company we acquired and have integrated called Asset Impact. We work as one unified global team. GRESB operates under a very clear theory of change. GRESB supports what we believe to be a virtuous cycle. This cycle links institutional investors. They engage with their investments, expressing their priorities for sustainability, as well as other environmental, social, and governance issues. The companies that they invest in respond to those investor priorities by completing the GRESB assessments, by measuring, tracking, and scoring operational performance. And in turn, investors and managers communicate over time, sharing progress and prioritizing action. We believe that that cycle generates positive outcomes for business and society and the environment. The first part of that process is investor engagement. This is the process by which institutional investors express their priorities. They encourage their investments to share their work through the GRESB standard. And in turn, what GRESB provides is a common language, a common standard to organize information about management, measured performance, and they do that, and possibly, if they have it, development activities. They answer in a secure, shared platform where they can have a private communication about that information, and they can exchange standardized performance information, such as the information that is collected and managed through the ARC platform. As one indicator of that, the nature of that engagement, we have seen the number of GRESB investor members grow significantly over the last decade. From 3 in the early days, this was USS, APG, PGGM, to a global community of 145 institutional investors, notably with global coverage, including foundational engagement from our colleagues at DBJ, at the Development Bank of Japan. The second part of this virtuous cycle is transparency. So it is obviously not sufficient for investors to only express their priorities. They expect companies to be transparent about their management and performance with respect to those priorities. So companies collect and report relevant information. They exchange it securely and privately. Part of the important issue here is private communication. This is not for everybody. This is a private communication between an LP, a limited partner, and a general partner. And the platform provides benchmarking, very similar to ARC, as a way to interpret practices and performance. In other words, providing a way to understand whether a given response is good, better, or best. One measure of participation and ultimately transparency is the number of companies and funds that participate in the GRESB effort worldwide. Last year, we eclipsed 2,000 companies and funds in the real estate space. with a large number of with a growing number of infrastructure funds and assets. Infrastructure is a little different in that we have infrastructure funds, such as those managed by companies like Macquarie. And then those companies in turn invest in assets that are generally bigger and more complex than a building, such as an airport or a toll road. You can see in either case, the market is becoming more transparent with additional participation. Taken together, the work that we do on real estate, infrastructure, and what we call climate critical industries that include things like aviation, power generation, and other things, collectively, we have reached a point where we cover investments in 15,000 discrete markets. These are cities, climate zones, grid regions, different combinations of markets. 65,000 companies, of which 85% are private companies. And those companies in turn hold 170,000 real estate assets with measured performance and an additional 300,000 sites or facilities for which we have predicted performance. So this gives you an idea about how market coverage has grown. Ultimately, the investor engagement and transparency matter when they drive positive change in management and performance. So I want to share with you what that looks like. What is that positive change that we have driven? Critically, the most important single graph that I could share with you is this one. This is the fact that participants in this process improve over time. So when participants start, the average first year participant has a GRESB score in the mid 50s, in this case 59.6. Over time, as they report and as they seek to improve through that engagement process, they gradually improve. The longer that they participate, the better their scores, increasing by almost 45 to 50% over the course of 10 years. So you can see that improvement, that they are doing more to manage and measure performance over time. Of course, these trends hide important details, one of which is that improvement varies significantly by property type. We're going to talk more about residential later, but what I'll show you is that there are property types such as office, where companies in this area are very competitive on sustainability criteria. They start at a higher level, they plateau more quickly, and they improve very quickly. Alternatively, residential development is, at least globally speaking, is a more challenging property type. They start at a slightly lower level, and they generally continue to strive and deliver improvements over long periods of time. We also, when we dive deeper, we can unpack these and see what is going on in these companies, what is driving their improvement. First, participants have more complete and transparent policies. That, for instance, we have seen a growth in the number of evidence-based documented policies from 66% of companies in 2015 to 94% in 2023. We have essentially complete coverage of sustainability policies. We also see an increase in stakeholder engagement. That means working with tenants to understand their satisfaction and how they use and manage space. That has also gone up significantly in the last 8 years. Finally, the last qualitative category is we have seen the rise of management of transition and physical risk in line with TCFD guidelines, or today we call those IFRS S2, which is the current name for TCFD. We have seen the growth in board oversight, the growth in the reporting around management's contributions, the growth in performance metrics, and the growth in climate-related targets on a global basis. Today, the greatest opportunity for differentiation is in measured performance, which is one of the reasons we are so aligned with ARC Japan and its efforts to measure, track, and score performance. So we understand that today, real estate participants, they track the consumption of energy, greenhouse gas, and water. However, as you can see, these levels of data coverage are not complete, even on an average basis, even encompassing office and other property types. Today, even though it's growing, data coverage for energy is 70% of floor area. That means 30% of floor area has no data on average. And at the same time, similar for GHGs and water consumption. We also find that another important area for differentiation is energy ratings and building certifications. These are third-party verified pieces of information. And as with energy data, we have seen a slow and steady growth in the coverage of building certifications. We measure that as the fraction of the company's floor area that is covered by certifications, 56%, 61%, 64%. But that also means that 36% of assets have never had any kind of building certification whatsoever, which is actually one of the larger opportunities for differentiation. One of the things we are doing with that performance information is looking at opportunities for participants to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions intensity. And one measure is the use of CREM carbon budget pathways. And what we see consistently across sectors is that participants are trending downwards. These are 3 or 4 different types of property in the Asia Pacific region. And you can see that they are trending downwards. However, you can see that the demands of a Paris-aligned carbon budget are declining more steeply. That means that many participants are under that budget today, but they will be intersecting that budget over the duration of an investment period. Critically, all of the things I've talked to you about, measures of management and performance, we work hard to show that these scores, indicators, and metrics predict risk and return, that they are a material to an institutional investor's decision-making process. And we are proud that there is a history of academic peer-reviewed research backing that up. That goes all the way back more than a decade, where we have seen REITs, US REITs, with return on assets and return on equity correlated with indicators and metrics. We have had in-depth studies of North American private real estate, where we have seen positive correlations with fund returns and price appreciation. Last year, we partnered in a study of European private real estate, where we saw positive returns on buy and hold basis. And this year, we are collaborating with the same research team and the ONREV Association to study Asian private real estate, and we will publish those results later this year. In the future, GRESB will not be standing still. This is a dynamic market that is responding to a number of factors, both our own success as well as social and economic pressures. I want to give you 5 examples of things that will be shaping the future of the GRESB benchmark. We understand that we need to continue to differentiate leaders even as they have made gains. We anticipate using performance to distinguish the best companies. We understand it is important to engage companies and funds that we have never worked with before. We understand it's critical to accelerate transition by helping investors allocate capital in new ways. We also have specific demands to support new thematic investment strategies. In other words, investing beyond sort of aggregated ESG performance into specific domains. And we are doing this at a time when there are significant trends in regulation around the world. I want to give you 2 graphics to visualize these priorities. This map, we call it the GRESB universe, is a representation of companies and funds in two components. These are their scores for management, and these are their scores for performance. So high-performing companies are in the upper right. They have exceptionally high levels of management and exceptionally extensive levels of performance measurement and monitoring across a range of issues, including energy ratings and building certifications. We understand that, as I mentioned to you, 4 different development priorities. 1, we must use performance to further differentiate high-performing companies. There is too much clustering in the upper right. Investors need more differentiation. We also need to create more incentives and mechanisms and tools for new companies to come into the market, such as value funds, Class B and C, companies and funds that previously didn't have a reason or a motivation to enter the GRESB universe. And we need to provide instruments and motivation for investors who are investing in transition. That is, their interest is more in seeing their investments move across this space rather than simply occupy the upper right. And as I mentioned, these thematic priorities, energy, emissions, water, social sustainability, and biodiversity, they would like to be able to look at these companies and understand more specifically, not just management and performance, but management of energy, the performance on emissions. And they want to look at that in a more granular, focused, thematic way. The second part of this is navigating emerging regulation. I'm guessing everyone on this call is familiar with the EU taxonomy and various taxonomy issues around the world, as well as the alphabet soup of regulation, whether it is SFDR or the Securities and Exchange Commission. We can understand 3 different kinds of regulation environments. 1, high performers need to support green claims and use that information to access capital, such as green bonds and loans. We also know that relatively low performing companies need to be aware, they need to provide transparency, and they need to provide themselves and their investors with information about regulatory risks and liabilities. And finally, almost every company is facing pressure to understand climate risk, both in terms of its transition to a clean economy and physical risk, as well as reporting on emissions for themselves and their supply chain. And many companies are facing local or national performance regulation. So we have different regulatory regimes, different regulatory challenges for different companies, and we are trying to support and navigate all of them. So I want to close my prepared remarks by giving you three things to watch out for or to learn more. The 3 things I would highlight for you are: 1, if you're interested in learning more about how GRESB is managed or what our priorities are for 2024, I would recommend to you the GRESB 2024 roadmap. This free download PDF describes the individuals involved in the governance of GRESB and our priorities for the next year and beyond. We also started a new podcast where you can learn more about the developments, more specifically about developments related to things like residential real estate and how we are creating some new tools and opportunities for investors and participants. And finally, I would encourage you to watch out for the launch of a new GRESB accredited professional program coming in about a month's time. This will provide a way for you and your teams and your colleagues to test their knowledge about the GRESB process. With that, I'm very much looking forward to engaging in discussion about a number of topics of interest.